So tonight I get to go to a musical. I get to go to a musical that is the Tarzan musical based off of the 1999 Disney movie with all the fun Phil Collins songs. And we have a natural kind of amphitheater on the outskirts of Lincoln called Pinewood Bowl, and every summer they do different musicals. Pretty much almost every summer for far longer than I've been alive, they have been doing musicals there. I think the only times that it let up was like during World War II, and then because of COVID. There are a few years in there where they didn't do it because of COVID, which is fair. But I've gone so many different times to go there. They don't just do musicals there. There's also like concerts that will be there, that my sister and my niece have been to several times. It's a very nice natural amphitheater, and there's food, and we're all going to go see the musical and everything like that. My mom and dad and my sister and nieces and nephew and all of that stuff, and some extended family. So that'll be very nice. Brenda can't go because I don't know if they allow dogs. And even if she did, it'd be way too many people around for her to be even anywhere near comfortable. But that really has no bearing on this video. That's just what I'm going to be doing later. But for the video, time to talk about chapter 1120 for One Piece. So, titled Atlas. So, first we have the cover page story, which is, of course, about Yamato's, journey all around Wano and everything. The video that I talked about last week, where I was talking about, what could happen. And, well, I wasn't right off the bat, but Denjiro has showed up. I was right in the fact that we would probably end up seeing some of the other scabbards and such that we hadn't seen for a little while. And we see Denjiro show up, and he captured those kids that were throwing rocks at Yamato. So he's got them in a net, and they're just like angry in the background on his shoulder while he's holding the net. And it is, Denjiro has been made the new daimyo of Curry. So that shows at least some part of this is getting back to normal. We'll probably see some of the other scabbards possibly given the positions of daimyos or other people within the Wano community be given, the new positions of daimyos throughout Wano in all of the different regions. So that'll probably be something else that we see and find out about while we're doing this. Which will be useful when I get around to doing some of the Wano videos. So we'll see what happens there when I talk about all the different rulers in Wano. I'll be able to make mention of some of these guys, not necessarily all individually in different videos, but at least some of them where I'm talking about the daimyos that we are aware of. Yasuie is getting his own video. He deserves it. But so probably what'll happen to the kids is just, Denjiro is going to be like, okay, kids, you're going to come with me. We don't throw rocks at nice people just because they have horns. And we see Yamato there, and he's just like, please don't hurt them. And Denjiro's probably just going to be like, no, I'm not going to hurt them. I'm just going to make sure that they don't throw rocks at people who are our allies again. It's like, okay, fair enough. Then we get into the actual chapter. So we start, a good chunk of this chapter is actually kind of flashbacks in regards to Vegapunk's point of view of the events of what happened with Ohara, in regards to like before he went to Ohara, and even little bits there while he was on Ohara and everything. So little additional bits of what we saw when we were learning that he knew Clover and everything like that. So we're going to learn more about that friendship. So, to start off, we cut to Punk Hazard 26 years ago, which is 4 years before Ohara was Buster called. And during this time for Punk Hazard, this is when it is still this very lush green island and everything like that. And yeah, there is the danger keep out type of a thing. But that's more just because there's a lot of experiments going on here. It is a government, experimental facility island. They don't want random people showing up here. And this would have been probably the initial laboratory setup that Vegapunk built when he first began working for the world government, when he began working as their head scientist after, Mads was, disbanded. Forcibly disbanded. So we see that it's already very flourishing. We see lots of the buildings that we would see that would get exploded later on because of Caesar Clown, or that would get destroyed because of the lava and the ice between Kuzan and Sakazuki during their battle and everything like that, where it got turned into the Punk Hazard that we are more familiar with, where it kind of looks like a Pokeball. So we get to see some of this, a little bit additional of what it used to look like. We saw a little bit of that and a little bit of the Punk Hazard flashback stuff. Now, bear in mind, this is definitely also long after Kaido and King had managed to escape. Well, not managed to escape. Kaido just decided, okay, I'm tired of being here, and walked out and then took King with him. So this is even after that has happened. So as I said, this is about 4 years before the Buster Call would have happened at Ohara, because that happened 22 years ago. So this is probably actually happening around the same time that Olvia is probably leaving Ohara to go on her journey, because she's gone for, I think she leaves in Robin's 2 and then of course comes back in Robin's 8, so that would be 6 years that she's gone. So I think that kind of lines up there. Or wait, hold on. 26. No, this would have been, Robin would have been 4 at this point in time. Sorry, because Robin is 30. Robin would have been 4 at this point in time, but Olvia would have still been gone for, like about 2 years at this point in time, and would still have about another 4 before she showed back up. Make sure that I have my math right in my head. So we're seeing this conversation, and there's someone talking to Vegapunk, and it's just like, please, Vegapunk, please look into the Void Century with me. There is a darkness in this world far too deep to be left unattended. As I continue my research, the need for the input from other scholars becomes more apparent. And we cut to where we see, like, it's the gate that, like, Luffy and Zoro and Robin and Usopp kind of came to when they first got to Punk Hazard, although it's not, like, half melted at this point in time and covered in lava. We cut to that, and we see Clover and Vegapunk just, like, with his huge freaking head. And then, of course, next to Vegapunk is one of the dragon experiments. Now, I don't know if we get enough of explanation as to whether or not this is, whether this is the big red dragon or if this is the green one. And there's another one in another panel, in the next panel, that is also a dragon. That could be either one of them. And it could be both of them are there, or these are just like the parents of those dragons, because I don't remember if we ever got like ages on those two dragons, because I would assume it's like, oh, if the world government hires this guy to, this amazing scientist genius, they're like, oh, we want dragons, and he probably was working pretty hard to try to get those up and going, and that would have taken a while to even get to them where they would grow to the point where they are, as big as we see, like the big red dragon that Zoro decapitates at the beginning of Punk Hazard. And then, of course, the smaller dragon that we see later on, that I believe gets killed by Kinemon. So we see Vegapunk and Clover talking, and Vegapunk continues, and he's like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm already a government man, so I can't hand you any of my data. Think about how many times you've been captured. No doubt someone has their eyes on you. Do you know why you've been left to live so long? So this is, of course, in reference to the fact that, like, as we learned about at the beginning of Punk Hazard, that, that Shaka was telling Robin about Clover in regards to the fact that, Vegapunk knew Clover, that Clover had been arrested multiple times and escaped and all of this stuff, and had, all on these journeys and expeditions and everything like that he'd been on for a good chunk of his life. So we're getting like an explanation, a little bit more information about that. And Vegapunk continues, and he's just like, they've left you they've let you make it this far so they could root out your friends like weeds. Get out while you're ahead. Whatever so-called darkness, deciding good and evil in the past, is a fool's errand. And Clover, and this is, as I said, this is Clover about 4 years or so before we would see him in Robin's flashback, and he still got some of his hair color, and he still got his typical, his clover-shaped hairstyle and everything, which is nice. But he's still got some of his color in his hair. He hasn't gone completely, white. His hair hasn't gone completely gray. And he's like, a long time ago, there was a man who carried the initial D, who was killed before my very own eyes. One day, out of the blue, we grew up together from the day we were born. My older brother. And Vagabond is just like, oh. And then Clover is just like, my real name is Cleoma D. Clover. Claiomh. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. And there wasn't any specific notes in regards to like what this means, what it translates to in different languages. So I'm assuming there's some type of a reference there, but I don't know. But Clover is a D. And that just means that there's this other person in Robin's life who, in a way, also saved her life, who has the D in her name because, she met Saul when she was a kid on O'Hara, and he had a D in his name, and he helped save her life. And then, she paid back that kindness by saving Luffy's life in Alabasta. And then, of course, Luffy saved her life, in Alabasta, and then later on, when the whole crew at that time went up against the world government, went up against CP9 in order to get Robin back. So here this is again, where this is another D in Robin's life who, to a degree, helped save her life because, as we saw in Robin's flashback, and they may have padded this in the anime a little bit, which is fine in this case, but like Robin had made her way into the library because she was so lonely because her uncle kind of neglected her and her aunt was, very abusive to her, and she definitely didn't get along with her cousin, and she was this outcast because of her mother on the island, that she made her way to the library and she just wanted to read the books, and Clover helped show her that, yeah, you can read any of these books you want. And like he gave her this refuge amongst the archaeologists that of course then leads into her becoming an archaeologist and learning how to read the poneglyphs. And then of course now Robin is this, this seed that Kuzan allowed to go into the world and what she has bloomed into. Or in regards to, this little bird that was let loose into the world and what she has grown into. So there is this concept there that like Clover, even way back then, was this, bearer of the will of D that was around Robin her whole life up until the Buster Call, and she didn't even know it. Because he may not have told anybody on the island that he was a Will of D member, that he was, a member of this clan in some shape or form. And that does probably add to, like, maybe Clover and Roger had met at some point in time, that there was this connection there, that there was this possibility, given how much Clover was out and exploring and everything like that in his younger days, that maybe they ran into the Roger pirates at some point in time, which is quite possible. The Roger pirates were sailed all over the world and everything like that, so that would have made perfect sense if they ran into Clover at some point in time. But, so we see Clover talking, he's explained, and we see this little flashback for Clover where it's like his brother was shot, and then he lied, saying that that's not his brother, that was his friend, in order to save his own skin, as he said, and then and there I lied to save my own skin. In this world, people are dying simply for carrying the name they were born with. Again, this is very much like that concept in One Piece of the sins of the parent being put upon the child. And we see that with Kuma because of whatever crime the Buccaneers committed back during the Void Century against the Celestial Dragons, against the Eam and the Alliance, and how, Kuma and Clap and Kuma's mother and then Ginny and Bonnie have all suffered because of that, even though it's nothing that they could control, because it's not Kuma's fault that he had Buccaneer blood. It's not Clap's intention was not to have his child have his son and wife and him become slaves, and then, two of them die, and now Kuma's been put through all this pain. And even in Wano, part of the, the sins of the parent put upon the child, and there in regards to, Orochi's family and everything with that. And then even, like, yes, Tama is an Orochi, but is a Kurozumi, but she's not, the bad kind. And now she's, welcomed into the palace, and she's kind of like this, under the protection of, Momonosuke and the royal family and, the royal court, whatever you want to refer to them as. And, she's under that protection there, while there are others who, hopefully will be given more lenience now because of everything. And, we see that there is this, the sins of the parent against the child. And, like, that is one of the reasons, what happens with Ace. And what could possibly have happened to Luffy had the world government found him when he was a child and found out that he was Dragon's son. That he would have been punished and probably killed and or enslaved simply because he was the son of the guy who was in charge of the Revolutionary Army. So there's this continued pattern here that we get. So Clover's still talking, and he's like, behind closed doors, there's a history being erased. And Vegapunk is just kind of like standing there, and he's kind of considering it. And then he turns around and he's like, no deal. It's best we both forget about this conversation. The most I can say to you is be careful. And then Clover's still shouting at him, Vegapunk! I'll do my best to try to solve this mystery. I can hear that voice shouting from the past. Now, depending on how this ends up being translated in the official translation, there's the possibility some people will be like, oh, Clover has the voice of all things. I don't think that's the case. I think all this literally is just this concept of, like, that there's like a silenced voice in the past whose story deserves to be told. And Clover wants to find that voice so that way that story can be told, is what it's referencing, I think. Then we cut to 22 years ago, which is just after what happened with Ohara. And we'll get a reveal of who's talking in a second, but it's like, did you hear the news? Ohara got done in by a buster call. I would have loved to have seen the mass murder. And we see Caesar, 22 years ago, still just as annoying and ugly and creepy. And he's just, like all prancing about and everything like that. And he's just like, that archaeologist Clover looks like they finally caught the rat. Sure. And he's just, like, blabbing his giant mouth, as is his tendency anyway. And he's just like, I bet you no one else is going to pop up wanting to study the Void Century. They made an example of him. And Vegapunk is not saying anything. We just get, like, the ... dots in, like, regards to what he's thinking. And he's remembering that, his plea, Clover's plea of, please, Vegapunk. And then we see Vegapunk looking at the poster of Robin, because of course she was the sole survivor of Ohara that up until, this arc we were aware of, and that the world was aware of, because of Saul, now that we know about. And I think it's Caesar that's just like, oh, it looks like only one kid survived. So just like Caesar being the mocking idiot that he is. And then we cut to where we have the bit that we already kind of saw earlier in the arc, where we have Vegapunk has shown up at Ohara, and he brings the flowers, and this is where he talks with Dragon, and where he sees all of the books laying in the lake. And, where he sees the books laying in the lake, where he sees, the giants, Gerd and Hyrudine and Goldberg and Road, like, all getting the books out of the lake and everything like that. I still want to find out why they specifically went. I know it's like Oda chose them because they were giants we were familiar with, who would have been, of age at that point in time. But it's like, okay, I want to find out if there is, like, the reason why they specifically went because of, like, Saul or whatever the case may be. I want to find out about that later on. Hopefully we will. I'm fine if we don't, but I kind of want to. And we just see, and we see Vegapunk just as he's breaking down because it's like he lost his friend, but it's also this all of this knowledge that was lost and piled up, and he's just like, All these people died to leave this big pile of books to the next generation. It's so damn stupid. Who in the world would be so stupid? They'd give up their life just to pick up your research where it left off. And it's just it's this whole concept from Vegapunk's point of view, and it is kind of a this concept in regards from our perspective as well. It's just like, how much is this knowledge worth to those archaeologists that they were willing to put their lives on the line to protect it, to try to preserve some amount of their research so that way someone could come by later on and find these books again, or find their way to wherever these books are going to end up, which is Elbath, and be able to read them and continue the research that Clover and the archaeologists of O'Hara were doing on the Void Century, or just their research in general. So there's that concept there of just like, how far are you willing to go for that? And there have been lots of scientists throughout history who have given their lives in order to, for their science, for their research. I mean, like, I think I made the comparison, a while ago about Madame Curie, that she, it's like her work with radiation is what killed her, but because of all of the work that she put into it, that means that meant that other people down the line are less likely to die from that same research, because they know how to keep themselves safe while they are doing the research, because she sacrificed herself to a degree, maybe not 100% intentionally, but she did, in order to do it. And no, I don't think Clover and all the rest of the archaeologists were under the impression that, like, oh, we are definitely going to die because of all this research. But, like, the second the CP9 agents showed up, they knew that was most likely what was going to happen. And so it's just like, we can't let this library be destroyed. We can't let all of this knowledge be lost, because it's, and it goes back to kind of, to a Doctor Who quote that I like. It was like, you're in a library, you're surrounded by books. Books are the best weapons in the world, type of a thing. So it's just like, it's that concept there of just like, books that hold this knowledge can sometimes be the most powerful weapons, that hold true knowledge, real knowledge about what happened, about the history of the world and events and everything like that, can be far more powerful than, a weapon, because knowledge can outlast most weapons, where it is that concept of, the pen is mightier than the sword type of a thing on that basic level. And so then we cut back to present day on Egghead Island, where we see, the message is continuing, and I'm going to go over what's being said in the message first, and then I will continue with what we see in the background. So Vegapunk is going, and he's just like, a wise man told me. I can hear that voice shouting from the past. History is something that the winners pass on. This is true. The winners are the ones who write history, or history is written by the winners, not the losers. That is very true, as we have seen in our own history. And he's just like, continues, and it's just like, the voices of those sunken losers have gotten awfully quiet there at the bottom of the sea. However, after many sacrifices, we're now able to learn the truth. So, pause for a moment. We see a couple of other things that we hadn't seen yet. We finally see Zeph and Patty at the Baratier, so we're seeing them watching this, or listening to this. We cut to what I'm pretty sure is supposed to be Tequila Wharf, because we have it's snowy, and there's someone with a whip, and they look like they're whipping someone, and I think this is supposed to be Tequila Wharf, which I mean, like 2 years ago when everything happened, we know that the Revolutionary Army showed up there and freed a bunch of the slaves that had been working there. Like, I know it was just, filler stuff with like Soren and stuff like that. There was a little girl that like befriended Robin while she was there, but they help free all of these slaves and give them a second chance at life and everything. And it looks like the world government just brought in more slaves to continue building this bridge to nowhere for people who are, long since dead, and will never get to see the completion of it anyway, and will have forgotten why it was supposed to be built in the first place. Pointlessness. And then we cut to where we see what is clearly inside the Thousand Sunny, where we see Robin, who is probably I think she's in her and Nami's room, because we see like the vanity mirror that had been used by Brule to get into the ship, and then Luffy destroyed it, so they got it replaced at some point in time. I'm assuming they probably like replaced it and fixed a bunch of their mirrors and everything like that while they were at Wano. During the time span between either the 2 weeks while Frankie was fixing stuff up, or, just before they left Wano, they got all of that stuff replaced. But we see Robin in there, and she's listening to the message from the snail, so we know she hasn't been able to listen to the entire thing, but she's been able to listen to, like, part of it now, since she is now inside the Sunny as they are trying to escape. And she's just, like, sitting there with, like, her hand covering her face, so we can't tell, but I'm pretty sure she's probably trying to hold back tears, particularly if she's figuring out that Vegapunk is talking about Clover. So, because we get a big chunk here where, like, there is a little bit of the Vegapunk message, but it's, like, very interrupted by a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm going to go over the other stuff first before I go back to the Vegapunk message. So we cut to outside of the ship, where we see where it's still, trying to slide across the island clouds that Edison helped set up so they could try to go across that. And we see that, Zoro and Jinbei have managed to get to the ship itself, or on the ship, whichever. And they're all working on trying to get everything ready to go so they can do the Kude burst to fly off. And, and then Lilith is yelling at them, and she's like, it's no good, we can't go. And Zoro's like, yeah, that old horseman is still trying to kill us. And it was like, and Lilith is still saying, it's like, that's exactly why we can't go. I understand that the ship can fly 1 kilometer with its accelerator, but if we lose out even a little bit of charge up speed, then our horizontal projection distance will drop, and the wind is blowing north. A tailwind would reduce our lift, according, blah 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 calculations. And we see Nasjiro is getting ready to draw his sword again as he's like galloping toward them. His design, I think, is still my favorite out of all of them. I just love horses. What can I say? And I think Mars, for his giant Itsumare form, kind of, comes in very, 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 very close second. But skeleton horse with a samurai kind of edges that out a little bit. No offense. And then we have, so at the end of the last chapter, Atlas had jumped up into the sky and was flying up to the top of the dome where the Sunny is. And Atlas has now shown up, and she pops up, and she just like clobbers Lilith to knock Lilith out. And Atlas hates doing this, but she knows that she has to, because she's figured out that York is tracking them by who's communicating with Punk Records. So she knows that York is tracking them that way. So Atlas knocks out Lilith, which of course surprises Zoro and Usopp and Chopper, which is fair. And Lilith, stops her, and it looks like Zoro's maybe about to attack her. And someone's asked, it's Usopp, I think, that's asking, why did you do that to Lilith? And Atlas kind of cradles Lilith's head a little bit, and then she looks at them and she's like, take care of Lilith for me. Take flight. I'll be the one to clear the path for you. And they're just like, what in the world are you talking about? And so we see that, and then we have this little panel where it's York is still monitoring everything. He's like, haha, Lilith's access has been interrupted. Only Atlas remains. So it's just we're down to one good Vegapunk in regards to Lilith, and one bad Vegapunk in regards to York. And I still don't like it that so many of the others have died, and Atlas, spoiler alert, is not going to survive this chapter. But it's they've all been getting slowly eliminated throughout this. And so what Atlas does is she flies off, and she's flying at Nasjiro, and then we have what ends up happening is we see Nami, and she's telling, Zoro to bring Lilith over there, so I guess she can get medical treatment, whatever form of medical treatment she can get from Chopper. And then they're yelling at Atlas, like, tell us your reasoning. Like, why are you doing this? And she's flying at Nosturo. I'll get back to that in a second. But we cut to Jinbei, who is taking this opportunity to just like, we see Jinbei and Chopper and it's just like, all right, here we go. If you delay your decision, you'll regret it. And Zoro is shouting at Brook to activate the Kude burst. And Brook activates it. And we see that taking off. We see Atlas flying at Nosturo. She grabs him around the waist with one of her arms. Her other arm, her left arm, gets chopped off by Nosturo, which is probably painful because they do have like pain receptors. Even if she is like a robot, she still has pain receptors. But she's like, screw that. I'm focused on this. And she is like activating her jet boosters and her Dom shoes and her jetpack and just flying as fast as she can with a good grip on Nosturo to fly off in one direction, going up, while the Sunny is Kude bursting the other way to go over the top and to go over the island clouds. And we see Jinbei is, steering the ship. He's, helming the ship because he's the helmsman, of course. And then Usopp and Chopper, but like hanging on to Jinbei as that's going. So, pausing on that for a moment, while I go back to what Vegapunk was saying in his message, because there was like this big skip in there where it's just like tiny little box, and that was, now I've convened to the world. A bunch of stuff happens with Atlas and blah, 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 keep going. The broadcast is ending. At this point, I just pray it was able to safely deliver this message. Pausing again. I know someone at some... I know that I think Archer at the Library of Ahara and several other people are probably going to do, once we get like the full end of messages and it is done, we will get like a full transcript of the official wording of the message in that regard, which is perfectly fine in my opinion. Somebody else can do that. They'll probably catch more stuff than I did. So, pausing on the message again, we see the Navy ships are there, the Marine ships are there. We see that they are seeing the giant robot fighting against, it would be fighting against Mercury and Jupiter, who they call a worm in a second, and against, the Itumare, against Mars as the Itumare. And they're just like, what is going on over there, Vice Admiral Hound? And they're just like, a giant boar, a snake, a bird, a robot. And Hound's just like, I don't understand. I can't hear anything in regards to what's going on. And Luffy is doing like, the starry-eyed look at, the robot. He's just like, a giant robot. And the giants, and even Sanji and Frankie, which I love the addition of Sanji being amazed by this. It was just like, an iron giant. It's just like how amazed they are. And then the giant is talking within his own head, but because Luffy has the voice of all things, he can hear the Iron Giant talking. So the giant is like, Joy Boy, I'm so happy we finally meet. And then Luffy's like thinking and then like looking around, and then the giant's just kind of like, that's you. It's like, I love the giant having a moment of humor. It was like, that's you. You're Joy Boy. You're giving off the freaking drum beat. You're Joy Boy. And he's just like, I'm so happy. I can still fight. So it's like the giant's very happy about this. And like he's making his way back onto the island so he can start, he already knocked off one of Mercury's, tusks in the previous chapter. So now it's just like, oh, and he's right next to Luffy. So he's able to get like really well charged from that, on top of however much charging he's gotten from Luffy's other times in Gear 5th and Bonnie in Gear 5th for the little bit that she was in Gear 5th. And everything. So he's making his way onto here. And we continue with the Vegapunk message. And he's like, it would be foolish to only hear the story of 900 years of a 900-year-old conflict from one side. True. That is kind of, that is, as is stated, it's like the winners are the ones who write history. And sometimes to make themselves seem stronger, smarter, better, they will kind of fluff the reputation of whoever it was that they were fighting against. That's why a lot of the time in history, they will try to find corroborating sources from from the side of the people who were fighting and the people who they were fighting against, and try to find as many different, corresponding stories as is possible. I'm gonna use Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon as a reference here because House of the Dragon is going on right now and I am enjoying it. You can see Matt Smith, so I'm happy about that. Doctor Who girl, what can I say? And so House of the Dragon is, of course, this history, this prequel to Game of Thrones, and this is taking place about 150-ish or so, a little bit more than that, 170 some years before everything happens in Game of Thrones. And within Game of Thrones, there are the books that were written about the history of the Dance of the Dragons, which is House of the Dragon. So those books were written by like 3 different sources, but none of them were like a fully 100% being able to corroborate everything that happened here. Some of it was rumor, some of it was hearsay, some of it was, yes, this is historical record for when these people died and for when these people were born and some of these events, but it's not 100%, accurate. And now the show is doing a way of being able to show it from like this perspective. And, so we get that kind of shown there. And in this case, Vegapunk doesn't want it to be that he just tells the story from whatever he thinks he's determined based on the facts that he's found. He wants to have it be that, like, the actual history is told to the world. So the giant is heading his way to go and fight against the Gorosei that are there. And so he's still like, I'm so happy, I can still fight by your side, Joy Boy. And then Luffy's just like, that's amazing, you can talk. And again, it's like, this is happening, the giant is talking in his own head, but of course, because Luffy has the voice of all things, he can hear it, as I said. And he's thinking, Joy Boy, you're in danger here, I'll protect you. And we see Warcury and we see Jupiter, and Warcury's just like, as long as we smash it to bits. And then Jupiter is like, we should be able to end Vegapunk's speech. And then the giants are just like, all right, let's set sail. And it's just like, they're asking Luffy, is like, hey, is he on our side? Is the giant robot on our side? And he's like, Luffy's like, not sure, but he did say he'd protect some guy named Joy Boy. Who's that? And they're just like, he was speaking, I didn't hear a thing. And Luffy's like, what, really? And then we see Vice Admiral Bluegrass, who is still in her child form, who is adorable. She's like, don't let them escape. Keep firing. So they're still firing at the giant ship, which again just like dwarfs all the marine ships. And they're like, and Vegapunk's messages continue. Is like, it's best to look at history from multiple angles. I wanted more time. However, still, there were those who cannot be stopped. And we see, Jupiter is, rearing up in his sandworm form and is trying to attack the giant, and the giant is punching him. And we get a panel that is Frankie doing the starry-eyed thing, which makes perfect sense, but we also get Sanji doing the starry-eyed thing, which we don't get to see Sanji do that very often. We see Frankie and Usopp and Chopper and Luffy do the starry-eyed thing a lot, and we've kind of seen Zoro be impressed by some of the stuff that Frankie's made in the past, and Brook a little bit too. Robin's generally not that impressed with it, neither is Nami most of the time, but the boys tend to be impressed with it. But I don't know if we've seen Sanji have this reaction to like this level of science, because like he's not impressed by anything that his father has done, which is fair, but it's just like, I like that he's impressed by this, and they're just like, oh, he's getting ready, something's gonna come out. They're just like 2 kids in a candy store watching this right now. They're just like waiting, which is just so adorable. And Jupiter and the giant clash, and the giant stops Jupiter, but it looks like Jupiter managed to bite off one of the giant's arms. I think that was new damage that just happened, but he like bites off one of the giant's arms, bites off his left arm, I believe. And, Luffy, Frankie, and Sanji are all just like, oh no, because they're just like, that's not good. And the elder, the Gorosei, keep talking, and just like, a weapon from 900 years ago. Well, of course he couldn't use it. Peter, eat him up, just like that. Stop the broadcast. And Saturn dashes by, and he jumps. I think he bounces off of Jupiter, and then lands on, it would be on, it's like on the bow of the ship, or like the pointed back end of the ship that he's landed on, and is like staring down menacingly at Luffy and Sanji and Frankie and the giants that are there. And he's just like, I won't let you get away. And he glares down, and he's glaring at Kuma, who is of course laying there on the deck, and Bonnie, who is still in her child form because she's still exhausted from going into the gear into her Nika form, her most free form. And Frank and Sanji is just like, he's sensing something, and he looks up, and we see from their angle looking up the Sunny go over the edge of the island clouds, and it's flying through the sky. It's flying over the edge. And we see, because like the Straw Hats are semi used to what they have to do whenever this happens, but they're not all there like normal. So Nami is like holding on to one of the masts for dear life, and Zoro is shouting, is like, hold on tight, we're going down, as it's like falling down through the air. And it's just like, wait a minute, are we gonna make it? In regards to like how far up they were, and how far down they're gonna fall, and everything like that. And we cut back up to where Atlas was still flying and pulling Nesjuro away with her. And then he's like, chastising her, just like, you're sacrificing yourself. And she's like, nope, think of it as a service. And she blows herself up. So she pulled a Pell. Although I'm pretty sure she's actually going to be dead at this point in time. She blows herself up, which is going to cause a lot of damage to Nesjuro, which is going to be good, which means that's just like one less one that can't immediately chase off after the Straw Hats. And we see the explosion helping boost the speed of the Thousand Sunny by having that force come behind them. So they're flying even faster to get down to where the others are. And we don't see the ship land in the water yet, but we see that Nesjuro has at least taken damage. And he's either taking damage and then healing from it, or this is part of the damage that he's taking, because he's just like, he's still not happy with that. So your Atlas has now blown herself up, and they're just like, and we see we see Usopp and Chopper just like, what the hell was that? Don't tell me that was Atlas. And they're just like, perfect, we'll make it to the sea. And then they're just like, oh no, what happened? And Vegapunk's message is going again, but I'm gonna finish that after I finish like what's going on in the other panels. And then we have and then we have York laughing, because now she's like, Atlas is gone now, so the only Vegapunk left in the world is me, is like her thought here. And then they're just like, and Nesjuro is just like, no, there's still that Stella who won't shut his damn mouth. And we cut to Saturn, and he's angry. I mean, bear in mind, I cannot blame the Gorosei for being angry as to what is going on at the moment. I can't necessarily blame them for that. I can blame them for their actions in regards to what they are doing in order to kill so many different innocent people who, didn't do anything to them in the form of the scientists and other things like that. But, I can't blame them for being angry given the fact that this is a giant threat to their hold on the world. Yep. So there's that, and they're just like, so they're still trying to get to, we have, Mercury and Jupiter are still trying to attack, the giant. Just like, of course we'll stop him now and everything like that. And the giant is thinking, oh geez, it's all rusted. This is a time of emergency. After all, Joy Boy, should I use it? So there's this concept of like, okay, well, there has to be some like final save or final like, endpoint mechanism possibly inside of the giant that is either designed to explode or, self-destruct, whatever type of a thing that was similar to like whatever type of a, kill switch, shut off switch, whatever that had been supposedly put in Kuma in order to make him blow up should that happen, should he fall into the wrong hands, as Saturn had requested. So there's the very good chance that the giant has something like that inside of him, inside of itself, that Emmett may have inside of himself. So that's the possibility there. And, you know, with Mercury and Jupiter, you know, bearing down on him, if he's able to activate it, you know, use whatever is left of his power to do so and activate it and, you know, blow himself up, particularly if he's like holding on to Mercury and holding on to Jupiter somehow when he does it, then that would cause probably a fair amount of damage to them. By the way, I was trying to see if I could get a better look at Mercury in any of these stills to see if it looked like he managed to, if he was able to regrow his tusk. So give me 1 second. So, and there's the earlier panel where it does look like he's possibly managed to regrow his tusk, but I can't tell because one of them is covered by a speech bubble. So I can't tell if that was the same one that got broken last chapter or not. So there's a possibility that Mercury was able to heal from that already, in regards to that damage that he took, but we'll have to wait and see. But the giant was able to do damage on him anyway, which is still energy that he has to spend regenerating his tusk. So there's the possibility that, you know, the giant has this like bomb inside of its chest, as is, you know, possibly going to happen. We were like teased with that with Kuma. We might get that now. So we get that. And then like Vegapunk is still talking, and then so the message continues, and he's like, 25 years ago, the pirate Gol D. Roger did what no man had done before in the whole world. Did what no man had done before in the whole world did before. Something got repeated there that's not supposed to. And so they should have heard it. In short, and I think everyone is already aware of this by now, this is my prediction for the future. Okay, so is this like the full end of the message? Is there going to be something else that we're going to get in the next chapter? Next chapter is the 27th anniversary chapter, so we'll see what happens there. And then the last panel is like prisoners down in probably Impel Down who are listening to this message, you know, like, huh? What? Did he say Gol D? What's that? So it's just like, again, it's this whole concept that like the world government, that the Gorosei and such had hidden the fact that Roger was a member of the Will of D by just making his name Gold Roger on the posters instead of Gold D Roger. So that's not a very well-known thing in the world at that point in time. Kureha kind of knew about it, and she's the first one to have like hinted at it way back at the end of Drum Island. But and some others have like, you know, talked about it, and we as the audience are aware, but it's like to the world as a whole, he's known as Gold Roger. So that's all fun and games there. I don't know what's going to happen next. I mean, the Sunny is about to land, so they need to be able to catch the Sunny. And between Frankie and Sanji, they might be able to do something with that where they're able to catch the Sunny, or the Giants might be able to help with that. We kind of get a bit of a size comparison between the Sunny and the Great Eric, which I believe is the name of the giant warrior pirate ship, if this is indeed the Great Eric, just, you know, kind of remodeled. The Great Eric 2, the Greater Eric. And they don't seem to be super different in size. I mean, like, the Sunny is a pretty good sized ship, but we've also, I think, seen the Sunny in comparison to, like, the Polar Tang and to Kids' ship back on Wano. And I don't remember if, I mean, I think Kid's ship was a little bit bigger, but Kid also has a bigger crew than the Straw Hats do. And I think he even has, possibly has a bigger crew than, or had a bigger crew than Kid did, or than Law does. However, that all comes out in the wash. Comes out after all of them have been swimming in the ocean. Well, we know at the very least that Beppo and Law are alive. We know that from earlier in the message. When we were cutting around the world. So the Sunny is going to have to get caught somehow so it doesn't smash into the ocean. And I know that it's much better designed and much able to handle more damage to the ship than the Mary could. If this happened to the Mary would just get smashed, unfortunately. Same thing that happened with the knock upstream and everything like that back at Jaya and Skypiea and all of that stuff. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll see if Luffy does something where maybe he turns into a giant and catches the ship so that way it doesn't get, smashed somewhere, and then they're able to keep going, and then something might happen, but they got to get Saturn off of the Great Eric. They got to do something to get him off of there. And what that's going to be, I don't know. But they have to get him off of there before they can keep going. And then they need something that can hold back 3 of the Gorosei. I mean, Nosturo took damage from Atlas, but he can probably get down there pretty quickly, given how quickly we've seen him move. And then, Jupiter, if he starts sucking the air back in again and making that, vortex pull, then that would suck the ship back. But they have to figure out a way to get Saturn off the ship and get, the rest of them to keep going. I mean, the option there, I guess, technically would be something where Dory and Bragi and Ormo and Kashi and the rest of the giants, sacrifice themselves, and then, Luffy and Sanji and Frankie and Bonnie and Atlas, Kuma and Vegapunk's body all get tossed onto the Thousand Sunny. And then they keep sailing, and then the giants stick around and continue to fight. But then it's just but then Usopp's not going to get the chance to reunite with Dory and Bragi the way that he should get the chance to, because Luffy got that chance, and Sanji kind of got that chance, and Frankie got to meet them, but the rest of them that were the rest of the crew that had been on Little Garden didn't get to reunite with them again. So that would be kind of this sad way of doing that, where it's you don't always get the reunion that you wanted. And they might stay and keep fighting to allow the Straw Hats time to keep going, because they know that they're the ones that have to keep going. But we don't know exactly how that's going to play out. So we'll have to wait and see on that for next week or the week after, however it ends up going. Next week is supposed to be the 27th anniversary, so I do believe there's supposed to be a cover page spread, so that'll be nice. So we won't get a Yamato story, but we will get a cover page, a big color cover page spread, which is awesome. I always love those. So that's what we have. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a nice rest of your day, and because I'm going to go see Tarzan later, if you haven't watched Disney's Tarzan for a while, I don't know, if you have Disney Plus, go and watch it. It's a good movie. It's fun. It's just fun. I like the movie, and you get to watch a bunch of animals do a weird beatboxing thing while they trash the camp. And it's good Phil Collins songs. So that's what we have, so bye.